I'm Carinya Sharples. I'm a freelance journalist, and up until recently, I was a part-time lecturer at the University of Guyana. I'm back in London to do a master's in creative writing and education at Goldsmiths, and hopefully be doing more creative writing, things like that. But I was born in London. Last 3.5 years I've been living in Guyana, and now I'm back here for a year, and then after that we'll see. I think growing up we didn't have a TV, so I was reading a lot, and I think reading turned into writing. And my dad's very artistic. He paints and he wrote a lot as well. When he was living in Guyana, he used to write for the local newspaper, short stories, things like that. So I think that interest in writing has always been there. And he used to tell us these stories about Guyana when we were growing up, all these kind of stories that made it sound amazing, about going out into the yard, picking mangoes off the tree, and cycling to school in tropical rains and having to keep your books behind your back to keep them dry and stuff like that. So he always was talking about Guyana. So it was like this kind of presence in my childhood, but only in terms of stories, not food, because it was my mum, who's English, who would be cooking. So it wasn't really in terms of food, and not really that much in terms of socialising, because my dad's quite quiet, and so he wouldn't really take us to Guyanese events and things like that. So apart from my aunties, there wasn't really that much Guyanese connection really. So I think even though I had some awareness of Guyana and things like that, it was a place that I was kind of curious about.
Okay, so when was the first time you actually went to Guyana then?
It was in 2009. I was doing a little trip around South America, so I went to Guyana first for about 2 weeks, and then I went to Suriname next door, which used to be Dutch Guyana, and then French Guyana, and then Brazil. And then from Brazil I flew back to Guyana and then left from there. So it was a really nice trip, kind of through the 3 Guyanas, as some people call them, and then a dip into Brazil.
Just out of curiosity, what's French Guyana like and Dutch Guyana like? Or should I say French Guyana and Suriname?
Suriname, yeah. Interesting, because there's kind of similarities to Guyana in a way, in terms of the shape and size, and this, the kind of the capital city on the coast, but then the interior, the rainforest inside. But then you have the different colonial influences, obviously. So Suriname has this Dutch influence, and you'll find Dutch pancakes and lots of Dutch people there visiting. And French Guyana is still a département of France, so there are a lot of French people there. They have a space station. It's kind of this weird mix of things, and then also you have all the different people who were brought into those countries. So in Guyana, indentured labourers came from China and India, places like that. In Suriname, from Indonesia and India, and in French Guyana from Laos. There was some people from Laos. So you find these weird mixtures of food, of people, of things like that. So even though they have similarities in a way, they're quite different.
So language-wise, was it okay going across the countries, or do you speak other languages other than English?
Yeah, to a certain extent. So in Suriname, a lot of people spoke English, which was helpful. They have their local languages like Suriname-Tongo, or Taki-Taki, I think some people call it, which is kind of the Creole of Suriname, which apparently people who speak Guyanese Creole can understand each other quite well. So it's kind of interesting, because there must be a similar English base to it. And then in French Guyana, I speak some French and a bit of Spanish and Portuguese. So that kind of helped me get on there.
You talked about growing up with your father and not actually knowing a lot about Guyana. What made you want to make the leap to actually go there and stay there?
I don't know. So I went back in 2016 in February, and to be honest, I just wanted to leave London and I wasn't sure where to go. And I felt this kind of interest, but also this, I don't know, not a fear of Guyana, but people speak about it in quite a negative way, and in terms of crime, in terms of negative politics, things like that. And so it was two of those things really, wanting to kind of get out of London and this sort of rat race life, feeling ill off and things like that, and wanting to learn what Guyana's really like now. So between those two things. And I only intended to go for a few months and ended up staying 3.5 years. So, yeah.
What do you think made you stay those 3.5 years then?
Different things. I think partly the people I met. I made some good friends and just found it really interesting. Like, I was exposed to lots of different ways of looking at the world and different opportunities. And just exploring physically Guyana, the nature is amazing. Like, you can live so much closer to nature, I feel. Living with the door open, the window open, just something as simple as that. I just really like that kind of way of living.
What did you feel that you was losing or leaving when you left the UK? Is there something that you thought, oh my gosh, I'm really going to miss that? I'm assuming obviously your family, of course,
yeah.
But was there anything that you thought, forget it, I just want to get out? Or
I realised when I was there, I missed because obviously living in London is a different thing to living in England. So, the variety of cultures and music and things like that. So I missed that when I was there, and I realised I would miss that. But other than that, and like family and friends, I was ready to kind of get out for a while.
So based on your trip in 2009, were you able to connect with family members that you hadn't met before, or family members that you had met that have come to England before, and did that help you in your 2016 transition?
In a way. So I met some cousins who, some I'd met in England before, and some I met when I was there. And they were really welcoming and got me involved in lots of different family events and things like that. But it kind of made me realise that when I went back, I didn't want to necessarily be part of that, which sounds bad, but I didn't kind of want to get tied up in family events too much and kind of...
You wanted the freedom.
Yeah, I wanted the freedom.
To explore,
exactly.
And you don't think you would have got that.
No.
And that does happen a lot, even on a holiday.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I understand what you mean.
Yeah, and I didn't want to, just get too tied up in that, and then they might make me might try and stop me from doing things, like...
Out of care.
Out of care, yeah, but also out of fear, and I wanted to be able to do things on my own terms. So, yeah, I would see them every so often, but I purposefully kind of distanced myself a little bit from them. And, we had quite different lifestyles anyway, so, I would check in with them, they'd be like, oh, I've seen you been here and there and everywhere. But that was kind of as far as I went, really, yeah.
What was your first job out there?
Well, I was lucky enough to be able to kind of carry on the freelance journalism that I was doing here. So I was doing some writing for BBC, Latin America and Caribbean service. I ended up doing some radio pieces for World Service, purely I think because I was there. Like, if I'd been here, I might not have had the opportunity, but because they didn't really have anybody that, had previously worked at the BBC there, or I don't know, just some connections, it worked out that they gave me the chance to do some radio pieces. So that kind of built up over time. I was also doing bits of editing, whatever freelance stuff I could find, really, remote work. It was a bit of a struggle, to be honest, like money-wise. In the beginning and through a lot of my time in Guyana, because I wasn't earning quite enough, but it was enough for me to live, to pay my rent, to eat, things like that on the whole. So yeah.
So I would gather that your social life would have been different, obviously, in terms of having to make new friends, and also that what's available is going to be different, of course. So what kind of things did you normally do out there, or what things did you find? Was there anything that you found interesting or enjoyable that you didn't think you would find enjoyable? What was new? What did you enjoy, basically?
Well, one of the things I enjoyed most was they have a thing in Guyana, you go to a creek to lime, so we would, especially on a Sunday, it's a thing to do, you have a friend who has a car, hopefully, and you'll drive up to a creek, which is just like a little river, basically, where they usually have black water. So it's this kind of cool, clear black water, which is black from the leaves and the sediments that are kind of in the water. And you just go there and you swim, you splash about, you take some drinks and food with you. And that was one of my favourite things to do, because I love being in fresh water anyway. So it was just like a kind of very chilled, easy thing. Other than that, Guyana culture in Georgetown anyway is a lot centred around drinking and alcohol. So, you'd go out, have some drinks with friends, up on the seawall, at a bar, things like that. That's the favourite thing to do, really, to just sit, lime and chat. And I enjoyed that. At times I found it a bit frustrating because I wanted to do things. I was like, I want to dance more, I want to do this. But Guyanese people are surprisingly reserved sometimes. You think, oh, it's the Caribbean, everybody's, people might have this impression that everybody's dancing and doing all this. But I find in Guyana, people are actually quite reserved. So I would go to concerts sometimes and people wouldn't really applaud or wouldn't really be very engaged sometimes. And it's just a kind of, I don't know, more reserved or more laid back way of things.
And it can be in a positive sense or it could be in a not so positive sense. What do you think you learned new from being there? Because obviously you would have had things in your mind about Guyana, but what do you think really surprised you, whether it be a positive or a bad thing?
Well, there are lots of things I learned about myself and about Guyana and about the world, really, to be honest. For myself, it was, how to slow down, how to not stress about things so much, I think. For Guyana, I just was able to learn so much more about the country because people are really generous with sharing information. And so, I picked up so much information from people just talking, taking the time to kind of sit down and chat with people, and people were taking the time to do the same. And looking at the world from a different perspective, growing up in Britain and then going to a country that was formerly a colony is a very different experience, one in the way that people see you, one in the way that people see England, and in how they see themselves. And so there was a lot of thinking I had to do about the way I saw the world and not letting, people kind of have certain expectations of you. Coming from Britain, they may think, your accent or your skin colour or things like that, you're going to get more opportunities, and that's a sentiment that some people said to me and things. And I was trying not to. I'm not explaining myself very well.
No, you were trying not to buy into it.
I was trying not to buy into that, and I was trying not to accept that because. You go to some places and people might serve a white person ahead of a local person and things like that. And so you try and be conscious of that and constantly check yourself. Like, are you making assumptions about Guyana which have coming from a colonized country? Or, if people refer to themselves as a third world country, should you not buy into that? I felt kind of trying to defend Guyana to Guyanese people sometimes because they'd be so negative about the country. I'd be like, but it has all this amazing stuff as well. But I didn't want to be too rose-tinted glasses. I wanted to, recognise both sides. But yeah, so it's trying to, deal with that, how foreigners are viewed there, and how going there as a foreigner but also a Guyanese in a sense. So it's an interesting process.
Well, one of the things that just being in places like visiting places like Antigua and Barbados, there's a lot of Guyanese people in those particular countries, and they tend to be afro-Guyanese as opposed to indo-Guyanese. Did you feel that you had to tread carefully around certain issues around the Afro and Indo-Guyanese situation? Because some people have spoke about that and said it's an issue, whereas did you find it's not really an issue, it's an outside thing that people are talking about?
No, it's definitely an issue, but I didn't feel I had to tread carefully because nobody there treads carefully. It's very explicit. You go down the street and it's like, Rasta man, Chinese man, Portuguese man, Douglas. Race is so prevalent and it's the thing that you're identified by, but not in a kind of negative way necessarily. Although some people do take offence at certain words that are used, but it's kind of a Guyanese thing to refer to someone's race, and it does become a negative thing sometimes, especially around elections. I hear. I haven't actually been there during election times, but there's obviously there's a bubbling of political discussion, and I do see those kind of conflicts. And I spoke to Afro-Guyanese people who would say certain things about indo-Guyanese people, and indo-Guyanese people who would make stereotypes about Afro-Guyanese people. But then there's also a lot of mingling and intermarriage, interrelationships, friendships. Understanding, you have Afro-Guyanese people going to Diwali and celebrating Pagwa, which is the holy festival, and things like that. So there's a lot of cross-culture, things like that.
I remember 2015 for me. 2015 and 2018 was emotional. I didn't cry, but when I was going home, I was like, wow, I've had a really good time here. And I've been able to reconnect with family members and whatnot. What was it like for you actually having to leave Guyana just this month, in fact?
I know. To be honest, I thought it would be harder than it has been. And I'm not sure if that's because I'm going on to something like the master's course, or because I don't feel that I finished with Guyana. You know, I feel like this is a time away. I don't know if I'll be going back to Guyana afterwards or somewhere else, but I've got that connection now, and I can't just, you know, that's not something that's going to go away. So I don't feel that it's a goodbye, I'm never going to see you again. I feel that it's a new positive step for me, like doing this course. But that, you know, Guyana's still there, and I'm still in contact with it, you know, through social media, through friends, through events here in Guyana, here in London, like Guyana Speaks and stuff like that. So it's still very much on my radar. And plus, I think just leaving was, you know, packing up things, sorting things out, chasing up stuff was a bit of a stress. So it was kind of nice to conclude that part. Yeah. But probably as time goes on, there are things that I'm going to start to miss. I'm like, oh, in Guyana, this is, you know, already I'm like kind of, oh, in Guyana, we used to do things like this. Like when I'm trying to meet up with friends here and they're like, oh, I'm free in 2 weeks' time. I'm like, oh my God. You know, like in Guyana, it's, oh, you're around tonight, you wanna hang out or something. Here it's like you have to schedule everything. So
you're gritting your teeth when you say that.
Nah, I'm just having to readjust to that, and you know, the speed of things. And, yeah.
It does make you think, because I do, like, it's better for you to speak than me, because I go on holiday, so I haven't got a job to go to. But it's interesting to hear you and many other people from the Caribbean or lived in the Caribbean say that. It makes you wonder, what are we really tying ourselves up in this country with? And it's like people, you just feel more relaxed, you feel you can talk to people, you feel you can slow down. And here it's just like we've always trying to fill in our calendar. I don't get it. I do get it because it's just in the culture that we're in Britain, but they can still get things done and still understand that it's time to spend with other people and other. I don't know what it is.
There's almost like a pride here in being busy. If you say you're busy, then it's like, good, okay, you're busy, you're working, you're doing something. And if you say, what did you do this weekend? Oh, you know, I just chilled at home. Be like, you should be making use of your time, things like that. So it's a balance between those two things. Because, you know, you want to get something done, but you also need flexibility for life and for things that come up. You know, there's a whole thing about Guyanese time where everybody has, you know, I'm sure there's Antiguan time, and you know, there's a kind of a different way of looking at things, but you kind of have to be like that because you have to move slower, one, because of the heat, but also, you know, there are different challenges in life that come up, you know, in terms of maybe transportation or floods, or just there's more of a flexibility that things come up in life, and maybe you can't do things exactly the way you planned, or you don't feel like doing it that day, and that's okay, you know. It's like I had to return a bicycle to a friend in Guyana, and I was stressing. I was like, oh, I said I'd get it back to her this morning, and so a friend of mine offered to give me a lift with the bicycle, and it was raining and this and that, and I, you know, put the bike in the car and we drove it up to her house, and she was like, oh, I just thought you'd bring it another day or something. You know, and I was like worrying for no reason, so I had to kind of check myself a lot about, you know, okay, do you really need to rush off now, or do you know, do you really want to go to this thing? If not, it's okay. Yeah.
There's a lady that I met called Dr. Desireen Bogle in Barbados, from Jamaica, but she lived in Martinique, and she talked about the time where she realised that, oh, I'm not fully assimilated because you were always born somewhere else, but was there a moment for you? It's just, oh, I'm settled. Like you like for her, it was a thing where when she went to the market and spoke French Creole, and they understood her, and she was able to communicate. Now, I'm not saying you have to speak Guyanese, Creole, or whatever, but was there something where you thought, okay, I'm fully assimilated now, like a funny story or a positive story, or just something where, you know, it doesn't have to be, it could just be any kind of thing that you thought, okay, I'm here now, I've kind of assimilated.
Yeah, I'm not sure really. I don't know. I can't really think of anything in particular. I mean, I did have to, like, I would try and use like Guyanese Creole a bit at the market and things like that, and you know, I I think maybe just getting a sense of the city, you know, like at first it was a bit confusing and every street looked a bit the same. But, you know, as I came to know the city and which bus to get here and there and how to, you know, call your stop on the bus driver without, you know. So in the beginning I would just kind of like sit there waiting for somebody else to like call the stop. But, you know, I became more confident with that. And I think I would always stand out, you know, people see you as different, you know, for whatever reason. And sometimes they would see you as different things. I got like Spanish in the street quite a lot because there are a lot of Venezuelan and Cuban people now in Georgetown.
So making the trip now, it's obviously a good thing because obviously you made the trip and you got to experience Guyana, but do you feel much more Guyanese now as a result, and you feel like you're more in touch with your culture compared to that the young Carinya who didn't know but only knew through stories and so forth?
Yeah, I think so, because I've experienced it in my own way and on my own terms. Like, actually, when my dad grew up there, he had a very different kind of lifestyle. You know, his family was quite well off. They had like a cook and things like that. And so me going back, I didn't experience it in the same way that I'd heard about growing up. And that was interesting for me to kind of position him where his family would have been and then go back and experience it in my own way. And, you know, and live in a way that some people were like, oh, that's crazy, why are you taking the minibus, or why are you living in Plaisance or something, you know, the different stereotypes that even within Guyana people have about the country and certain things that you do or you don't do and stuff like that. So so I feel I know more about Guyana now. I feel I have more connections there. I feel like I understand it a bit more. I don't call myself Guyanese necessarily, or British-Guyanese. Yeah, Guyanese by heritage, definitely. But
you feel closer.
Yeah, definitely, and I'm proud of it. You know, it's weird, but I'm probably more I'm probably more likely to defend it than England in some ways, because it's had, you know, such bad press sometimes. It has, you know, so many stereotypes attached to it. And yeah, so I get really kind of defensive when people say things about it or just have no knowledge about it. You know, like certain people I speak to here and they're like, oh, Guyana, they still don't know where it is, or they say British Guyana, and it's like, this is
that was a long time ago.
Yes, and this is a former colony now. It should be taught in schools, you know, what were the British colonies and things like that, so people understand why people from Jamaica are here, why people from Guyana are here, things like that. And not just that, but they just understand the history of the country, which at the moment is really necessary, I think, with the whole debates that are going on around, you know, the Windrush generation and, you know, immigration and things like that. So people need to be a lot more aware. It shouldn't be up to people like you, me or you, to educate people about, you know, about the Caribbean, but it's what you have to do.
What are some of the most interesting and beautiful places that you went to?
In Guyana? Oh, so many. Well, actually, I went to Carinya Falls on my first trip in 2009, so it's been a long time since I've been there, but that's like the huge single drop waterfall that you have in Guyana, and it's just so green and so beautiful, like the whole surrounding, not just the waterfall. And it's a very sacred place for the Amerindian people who have communities around there. And yeah, so many, like going up the Essequibo River. Apparently there are 365 islands on the river. Just the scale of rivers in Guyana is huge. It's massive. You think it's the sea or something. It's like, oh no, it's just a river. And then just exploring Georgetown. Most people just stop in Georgetown and try and leave as quickly as they can because they think it's too noisy and busy. But actually, you know, there's lots of great food places to eat out at.
Is there a lot of history and it's like a cultural hub, you would say, or?
I don't know about cultural hub, but I mean, a lot of events happen for particular occasions. So it might be like Indian Arrivals Day, they'll have some event about that. Emancipation Day, which is on the 1st of August, they'll have events around that. So often it's kind of tied to those things. You know, in terms of like live music and other events, there's not always loads happening, but I think increasingly there's more. You know, there's a National Theatre, there's a smaller theatre, there's the National Art Gallery. Some friends of mine recently opened a smaller art gallery, and I know some other people who want to open another art space. So I think people are starting to create their own spaces, Okay, if the government's not going to come and do it, we're just going to do it ourselves, whether that's for music or art or discussion or poetry. So it's nice to see, yeah, and I hope that continues, because like when I went to Trinidad, it was very vibrant, culturally, in terms of music and everything. So I hope to see that same kind of thing happen in Guyana.
I wanted to do some recommendations. So before migrating, what would you advise a person to do doing what you're doing? Say they're from a West Indian Caribbean heritage and they're looking to return to the country of their parents or grandparents. What are some things that you would recommend to them before doing that?
I would, have some savings, because chances are you're not going to find a job straight away, or even if you do, it might take a while to get paid and things like that. When I started at the university, it was like a few months before I got paid. So make sure, finances in good order. You can do, when I got there, I had like family already there, and a couple of people that I've been put in contact with, but you can also do things like couch surfing or Airbnb if you don't have anywhere to stay initially, which is quite a good way of meeting people. You think, there probably won't be that many places, but actually, I met a friend of mine in Guyana through couch surfing, and then through her I met other family members and friends. So going to lots of events when you get there, like I would go to any kind of talk or debate or opening of an envelope, whatever, just to kind of get to hear what the discussions were and to meet people. I met a lot of people through those kind of things. So maybe you can do that before you even go, like just get into any kind of diaspora events related to the country that you're going to, and then likely people will be going back and forth, and so they can kind of link you up, give you recommendations, help you find a place to stay, things like that. But ultimately, I don't think there's only so much you can do. You just have to kind of go there and find your feet and decide what kind of life you want to live there. Like, do you want to live a kind of a life, very comfortable life, which you can do. You can have a nice car, you can have a nice apartment, things like that, and you can kind of not really engage with the politics or the whatever of the country that you're going to. Or you can go in and you can try and learn what life is like at all levels of society and for all kinds of people, things like that. So you can live lots of different experiences. But I think it's good not to try and get trapped in too much of a bubble there. There could be like a expat community or something like that, which doesn't really give you... No, I try to shy away from that a little bit. Partly because a lot of people had shared lots of negative views. They were constantly frustrated by this and that. And I didn't want to get trapped in that way of thinking. Yeah, I wanted to make the best of it. And I wanted to meet Guyanese people who were there, So it was, making a mixture of those things, really. But I would just say do it, It was just an amazing experience, really. And I would suggest anybody to do it. Where you came from is still going to be there. So if things don't work out, you can come back. Make sure you always have a return ticket, so if things get bad, you can always come back, get health insurance, which I didn't do, but you should do that. And just embrace the opportunities that come along, and don't think that you deserve anything more because you're coming from here. Some people would go to Guyana with this expectation, well, I'm coming to donate something, you should be appreciative of that. Go with a different attitude now, I think. Just try and make it more equal, even if those unequal relationships still exist in terms of jobs, power, things like that. I think you have to, be aware of the imbalance that still exists and not kind of think that, you deserve more opportunities because of that.